Okay, so we want to congratulate each and every one of you for coming and being a part of the webinar this afternoon. Thank you for attending, and congratulations for attending. Some of you are attending live and in person, so to speak, virtually this afternoon, and others will be watching the recording later as well. So I congratulate them as well for tuning in and watching the recording, and I look forward to meeting with you in person someday very soon. So let me ask you a couple of questions as we get started, okay? And if your answer to both questions that you see on your screen is the same, you will have the awareness needed for this webinar to help you. If you answer these questions, will crisis come into your life again? Would you want to be better prepared to navigate through that crisis? If you answer yes to both of those questions, your level of awareness is such that you'll really be able to benefit from this webinar. And now that you know that the answer should have been yes, if you realize that, you also now have the awareness that this webinar can help you as well. So I hope you're looking forward to doing that and receiving that help this afternoon. So this crisis that we've been going through of this pandemic has certainly affected each and every one of us, hasn't it? And because crisis tends to take away our certainty, doesn't it? When crisis comes, all of a sudden, sometimes we don't know what to do. We have to take a little bit of time to figure out what to do. And because of that, I want to make you some promises today. We're not going to be in crisis, all right, hopefully, during our webinar, but I want to make you some promises today. And one of those promises is I promise to remind you of some truths that you already know about how to lead people in crisis. You know, a lot of times I've learned that we know a lot of stuff already. We've learned stuff through the course of our lives. And so you're going to be reminded of some truths that you already know about in terms of how to lead in crisis. I'm also promising that when we're through, you're going to have information to help you be better prepared for the next crisis as well. There's going to be some good information in this webinar, and I really believe that it will be helpful to you. And when you choose to respond differently based on that information, I promise that you'll be able to make things better for yourself and for those around you. These are truths related to leading people in crisis that are going to make a difference in how you lead other people in the midst of crisis. And then lastly, I promise you will know that you're not the only one who's continuing to learn to lead in this current crisis. I certainly have not arrived in my journey, and I don't think anybody else here has arrived as well. And so I think we're gonna know that we're not alone in this journey to learn to lead in crisis. Now, we've all been through this crisis together in a lot of ways, and we've learned some things together, haven't we? You know, a couple of things I've learned is I've learned that carry out from Olive Garden, in our area anyways, will still be hot when I get home. One thing I really enjoy is a good hot meal, right? And another thing is that if we get Dion's sandwiches instead of pizza, when we order carry out from them, it won't be nearly as long of a wait to get our food. I've also learned to video record my Sunday messages, and and share those on a variety of platforms. I'm a pastor, and I continue to lead my church in worship and conduct worship services together. And so you see on your screen there some pictures of some snapshots of some of the video sermons that I've done through the last number of months. One was in the springtime. We moved things outdoors to try to give people a little more space so they could enjoy being together without having some of those concerns. Another one was right there in September. So we just continued to press on and meet together, and even trying to do some things that were COVID safe there. You see me trying a new face shield, trying to make everybody's experience better as I used that instead of a mask when I preached. And then just recently last month, we celebrated Christmas, and we're still dealing with things when we were going through the Christmas season. And so you see our Christmas tree there. And so we've learned some things. Boy, I've learned all kinds of things, even up through today, about how to navigate and make use of some of the technology that we have for sharing information with others online and even over the phone. And so I've learned some things. We've all probably learned some things. We've learned how to make lemonade out of lemons, haven't we? You've had to make some changes too, I'm sure, some adjustments during this season of COVID. Maybe it's been with your job. Maybe your income has been impacted by COVID. Maybe your health has been impacted. I hope everybody here has been able to avoid getting sick with COVID, but I know there's many people that have been impacted with that. People even that we know have been impacted with that, and I'm sure people you know have been impacted with that as well. Your schedule and routines have had to make adjustments, and you've spent a lot more time at home probably than you might have wanted to. Maybe some folks would have enjoyed that, but there's been an impact there with your kids and their schedule with school. Okay, I know I spent a little bit of time working on school buses, and I understand the impact that makes on some of those kids. And so we've all been impacted, and we can all relate to one another in terms of the things that we've experienced. But I want you to understand that as we've gone through that, leadership is at play in our lives. Maybe you didn't realize that, but leadership is at play all around us. You know, as you hear about people who are exhibiting a desire and taking action to care about other people, we hear about volunteers who have reached out and helped other people just because they want to, because they care about what other people are going through. When you see that kind of care being demonstrated, that is a leadership quality. When you see nurses and medical staff sacrificing to the point that their faces are impacted and have the imprints of face masks, etc., and they have to spend time away from their families to keep them safe, and they're working long hours. That's a sacrifice. That's a quality of leadership. When you see businesses that are shifting and improvising so that they can stay in business, and so that they can even serve in some other different kinds of ways. You see them improvising and doing the carry-out meals and that kind of stuff. That's a leadership quality, the ability to pivot, okay, and improvise a little bit. When you hear our leaders, like our state governors or our presidents, communicating to the people, and sometimes we see good examples of that, and sometimes we see bad examples of that. But communication is a leadership quality. We need to be able to communicate with people, and we need to learn how to do that. When you see values that are being demonstrated in our communities that pull us together, when we start valuing some things that pull us together. All of these are leadership qualities, leadership qualities that are at play in our relationships already. And boy, we need to understand that. You know, over 20 years ago, I became distinctly aware myself that I needed to become a better leader. I needed some more of those kind of qualities in my life. I knew some as a pastor. I knew how to care for people as a pastor, but I just sensed that I needed to be a better leader. And I've come to understand a little saying that I've sort of created, and that saying is, leadership is a reality I could not avoid and a truth I cannot ignore. And I think that's true for all of us. Leadership is a reality we cannot avoid and a truth that we cannot ignore. So I've learned some things, but I've got such a long way to go still in terms of leadership and changing some things in my life and in who I am in such a way so that that leadership is part of who I am. You know, I need to make some changes. I need to become a better leader, and still got a long ways to go. And sometimes that's hard for me, but you know, my personality profile tells me I am hesitant to make changes. So I shouldn't be surprised when it's a little bit of a challenge for me. But back when I was pastoring at First Indian Baptist Church in Gallup, New Mexico here, I knew that I could care for the people as a pastor. I knew that. I could care for people. And that's important. That's a key factor in leadership, as well as in pastoring. But I had a sense that I wasn't leading them well enough. I didn't feel like we were making the disciples that we needed to. We weren't growing as a church like I felt like we needed to. I was having an impact with people's lives, but I just didn't feel like we were doing it at the level that I felt like we should. And so as a result of that need, I chose to pursue what's called a Doctor of Ministry degree, which is very much oriented to the individual's practical needs, like leadership development. And in the process of going through that degree, I had to choose an elective. Every one of us had to choose one elective. And I soon discovered in that choice, I chose the elective that focused on coaching. And as I studied coaching, I soon discovered that deeply resonated with my awareness that people had to take responsibility ultimately for their own lives to bring about needed changes in their lives. I was used to helping people and praying with people and doing different things to help people, but I would come away sometimes not really sure that they were going to make the changes that they needed to. But coaching, I think, was going to provide me a way to make sure, not for my sake, as much as for their sake, that they would make the changes that they needed to in their lives. Well, after I finished that degree, I went on to be certified as a professional coach, and then discovered the John Maxwell team, which not only focused on leadership, but also offered training in coaching, as well as speaking and even building a business, if that's what you wanted to do. And I've been on a journey ever since to help Native American people, especially indigenous people, with their leadership development through coaching. I founded what is now called Truth Dancer Coaching, my coaching company, to help people address the leadership reality in their own relationships, whether they're vocational or personal, because again, leadership is at work, all around us, all the time. We just don't often realize that's the case. And that's why I prepared this webinar, which, by the way, is my very first ever webinar as such. And again, I'm so glad that you're here with me this afternoon. So, as we think about leadership and crisis, you know, leadership in crisis shows up very loudly, sometimes very clearly. The presence of leadership, or maybe the lack of leadership, it shows up, doesn't it? And we all need to grow in this area of leadership, especially in relation to crisis. So I want to dive in with you a little bit to do that this afternoon. Let's look at some perspective principles in just a little bit. But first, let's think about what is crisis. Let's think about what a definition for crisis is. You know, it's more common than we think, isn't it? Well, a good definition of crisis is what I have there up on the screen for you. And you notice there's basically three parts of that sentence that are underlined because John Maxwell took this definition from the dictionary, from the medical journals or the medical textbooks, and from the Greek language to pull together his own definition of crisis, and I think it's pretty good. It says, a crisis is an intense time of difficulty requiring a decision that will be a turning point. Wow. A crisis is an intense time of difficulty requiring a decision that will be a turning point, that needs to be a turning point, doesn't it? That's what crisis is. And, you know, crisis does come and go, and especially for leaders, crisis comes all too often. John Maxwell says there are never 2 consecutive good days in a leader's life. You know, just when you think everything's going nice and smooth, then there's a crisis, you know. Leaders deal with challenges all the time, and sometimes they come all at once, it seems like. So we want to be ready for those times of crisis, and that's why we're here this afternoon. And to do that, let's look at some of these perspective principles, because the one thing that really helps us be ready for crisis is our perspective. What is our perspective when those crises comes? And if we can change our perspective, it really does make a difference. So the first perspective is everything worthwhile is uphill. Everything worthwhile is uphill. You know, watching some of these NFL football games and stuff, I'm reminded of how athletic some people can be, and I've never been an athlete on that level. I started into athletics a little bit when I was in junior high, and I became better through my teen years, but it didn't start out that way. I started out running cross country in junior high, and if you could see some of those pictures of me when I was at that age, I was a little bit more chunky, if you will. I don't know that I was ever obese, but I was not necessarily your typical cross-country runner. Well, I remember some of those training races that we had running down arroyos and whatnot. They were tough, but in one of my later races, the finish line to that race was at the top of the hill. It was at the top of a hill, and I was coming in last as best I can recollect. And in cross country, you know, the kick, maybe you've heard of the kick, can be a valuable tool because you sort of, you know, give it all you've got in order to make up for lost lost time, so to speak. And even though I didn't necessarily have a kick, I did decide to give it my all. And as I turned it on, I actually started passing a few of those other runners. And again, this was uphill, right? And so people started, to my surprise, cheering me as I did. I only passed a few runners, but I started passing runners. And boy, I sure did feel good, and it was worthwhile when I got to the top of the hill. Even though that hill was there, it was worthwhile. And so that's a good lesson for us, isn't it? We need to expect the uphill battles. We need to expect them. We don't need to expect everything to be nice and level and easy all the time. We need to expect some of these uphill battles to come in our life, and maybe even crave them sometimes, crave a challenge sometimes. You know, nobody wants to be a masochist, and especially nowadays during this time of crisis, we don't want to do that, but we need to live with an expectation so that we're not surprised when mountains and hills show up. That's crisis a lot of times. When crisis comes, it's going to be that way. It's going to be a mountain or a hill. And if we're expecting it, we're going to be better off. And if we're not, we're not. And so we need to live with that awareness, that understanding that when that hill comes, when that mountain comes, when that crisis comes, it's going to either leave you better or worse. And I believe your being here this afternoon means that the next time crisis comes into your life, you're going to be better off for it. It's going to leave you better than if you had not been here today. The second thing, I don't want to jump ahead of myself too much here, but the second perspective is that there's always an answer. There's always an answer. You know, sometimes when crisis comes, we can be like a deer staring in the headlights of the oncoming car, and we're mesmerized by the unknown that we are looking at when we're in the midst of crisis. But we need to snap out of it like that deer needs to, and we need to change our thinking and realize there's always options to us. There's always an answer if we'll just have an open mind and be on the lookout for it and actively pursue it. And, you know, my wife put a sticker on our bathroom mirror some years ago that I really have grown to love, and it said, "Talk your way into success, not out of it." You know, and that comes in handy when you're pursuing a challenge like starting a business, or maybe starting a church, or starting a new organization of any kind. You know, we find it easy sometimes to talk ourselves out of success, but we don't need to do that. We need to talk ourselves into success. You know, a friend of John Maxwell, Larry Stocksdale, said to him one day, "I live on the other side of yes." I live on the other side of yes. Think about that for a minute. He had adopted that mindset during his life so that when he faced challenges, obstacles, problems, he immediately tried to put himself on the other side of that and realized that there was an answer for what he was dealing with. So where do you live? Are you living on the other side of yes? Or are you living on the other side of no when crisis comes? We need to remember that there is a difference between a problem and a fact of life. There is a difference. They both need to be dealt with, but a problem is something you can fix. A fact of life just is, and you work around it. But either way, you deal with them, and neither one of them has to stop us. Neither one of those things has to stop us. Now, you've probably found some answers in your own life to navigating and leading through this pandemic. And so I would just encourage you to keep it up. You're on the right track if that's the case, because there is always an answer. The third perspective principle is allow adversity to reveal who you really are. Allow adversity to reveal who you really are. Because it will anyway. It has a way of revealing what's there. And what you want to do, what I need to do is transform our lives in such a way so that when those pressures come, the right things come out of us. And so that's what we want to do. And so one question to ask ourselves is, what will you do with that truth? When things are revealed in your life because of crisis, what will you do with that revelation? And what will you do to change that truth about yourself? You know, we all have strengths and weaknesses, and there's nothing wrong about either one, but we need to be aware of those strengths and weaknesses, and we need to work with those and leverage those to the very best degree that we can. You know, I may not have some of the natural strengths that people think of when they think of leaders. I may not be I may not be a person who has just a tremendous amount of charisma. My confidence level may not be naturally at the highest level that I wish that it were sometimes. My tendency to take action is not where it is with other people. I'm not a person of action necessarily. But I have other leadership strengths, like intuition. Intuition, just listening and sensing, paying attention to that inner voice, if you will. And I'm learning to listen to that intuition more and more. And of course, for me, that's tied to my relationship with God. And He's very, very much part of that intuition for me. I've also, like I've said earlier, got the ability to care about people, and caring for others can be a very good motivator for me. If I tap into that and use that in the right kind of way, I don't get carried away with it sometimes, it can be a good motivator for me to work in people's lives and to help people. Planning is also one of the strengths that I have. Again, as long as I don't get carried away with it, I can get caught up in the details, but my natural tendency is to plan and to take care of the details and to think through a lot of the details that need to be taken care of. And so, you know, I've got some strengths, I've got some weaknesses, and so I'm not going to always be the first leader to show up in a situation, but you know, I can use my strengths to develop leaders around me. I can use my strengths to develop other people around me to develop into the leaders that they need to be. That's what I can do. But crisis reveals who we are. So again, has this crisis revealed some things about you? Maybe some strengths? Maybe some weaknesses? Maybe some leadership habits that don't serve you well? Or maybe it's just left you thinking, what just happened? As this crisis, whatever crisis it is, has barreled through your life, you know, and as you sought to lead others through that crisis, maybe you just got sort of rolled over. I believe I have a way to help you with that kind of growth that I'm going to share about in a little while. So stick with me here a little bit, okay? Another perspective that we need to be aware of has to do with mastering our emotions. Why would we need to do that? Because actions drive feelings, not the other way around. If we wait for our feelings to come around, we might be waiting a long time. Actions drive feelings. And the quicker we master our emotions, the quicker you and I will recover from crisis and the negative emotions that come with them. When the crisis first hit, and the church that I pastor had to quit meeting in person right away, I'm sure I was sort of bummed out. But fairly quickly, surprisingly for me, I guess, I started using some virtual tools for our worship services. And it did make me feel better to take some actions that I felt like could help control our church life, that could help us to continue to be who we needed to be as an organization, instead of just throwing up my hands and quitting. So crisis is going to come, but when crisis comes and those emotions come, the sooner we can take action to bring some control back into our lives, the sooner our emotions will get better too. So take a moment. When the crisis comes, have the emotion. That's okay. We are human beings. But then take control of your life again, where you can, as soon as you can. Get back in control of your emotions. Another perspective to keep in mind is this whole idea of reflecting instead of reacting in adversity or crisis. Again, it's easy to react, but it takes a little bit more self-control, I suppose, to just reflect on things a little bit. And again, this is a good place to remind ourselves that we've already been through part of a crisis, almost a year now. It's going to be a year that we've been in this crisis, but hopefully by the end of this year, 2021, maybe we will have finished this crisis. But regardless of whether we are in it or whether we have finished it, when we have the opportunity, we need to take some time to reflect and learn from the experience. Learn from our experiences so that we don't repeat them. There's a famous poem that you may have run across already, and if you work in the area of substance abuse, you may be familiar with it. If not, I invite you to check it out. It's called There's a Hole in My Sidewalk by addiction psychologist Portia Nelson. And it goes like this. Chapter 1. I walk down the street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I fall in. I'm lost. I'm helpless. It isn't my fault. It takes forever to find a way out. Chapter 2. I walk down the street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I pretend I don't see it. I fall in again. I can't believe I'm in the same place. But it isn't my fault. It still takes a long time to get out. Chapter 3. I walk down the street. there's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I see it's there. I still fall in. It's a habit. But my eyes are open. I know where I am. It is my fault. I get out immediately. Chapter 4. I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I walk around it. Chapter 5. I walk down another street. We need to make it a habit to reflect more and quickly when crisis comes, so we don't fall into those kinds of holes in our lives, and that we can get out of them even quicker. Make it a habit to do some reflection in the midst of crisis. Maybe reviewing these reflection helps that you have on your screen there might help you. Just taking some time to do those few simple steps. Or maybe even reviewing these perspective principles every 3 months or so. Making that a habit so that you begin building into your mind the right mindset when it comes to approaching crisis. Number 6, always look at the big picture when it comes to crisis. What's the difference between seeing the small picture versus the big picture when it comes to leading through crisis? A small picture is just about you. A big picture has to include other people. You know, we've all been part of a big picture being taken probably at times. I go to a state Baptist Indian camp on a yearly basis normally, serving in leadership there most of the time. And at Indian camp every year, we try to get everybody in front of the dining hall for a group picture. And we're often hollering for someone to hurry and get in the picture. And the picture takers have to stand back a ways to get everybody in, because it's about everybody who we're trying to get in the picture. It's not just about one person. If you're going to lead other people through a crisis, you have to include their needs in the solutions that you offer, not just your own, not just what works for you. Think about their needs. Time moves on for me. I've got to keep things moving along. But this last perspective here says adversity makes people stronger. The more we flex our leadership to deal with adversity, the stronger we get. The more we flex our leadership to deal with adversity, the stronger we get. You know, during this time of crisis, I've been able to continue to go to the gym with my face mask on and our socially distanced practices and wiping down all the equipment. And when it's been open, thankfully it's been open most of the time, but it has been closed occasionally. But I've been able to continue to do that. I think I'm somewhat addicted to my physical exercise, which is probably a good thing. I do know that I'm a creature of habit, but it does help my older body feel a bit younger. I'm 60 years old, but thankfully I've never been in the hospital yet. Never been admitted to the hospital. And so I'm thankful for that. But, you know, when I'm there, I see people of all ages and degrees of fitness there. One gentleman that I've seen there must have been recovering from a stroke or something. He was severely, limited, but he was still there. Another young man that I've seen there is very much overweight, but he's there. Older people are there, keeping fit. And young people are there, starting good habits for the rest of their life. We need the exercise of adversity, and sometimes crisis, like I said, is going to come, isn't it? But when that gym of adversity opens in our life, opens for business, we don't need to avoid it. We need to go in. We need to do the exercises, face those machines. We need to do some sweating as we do that. We need to get sore and beat up as we do that. We need to stretch, do some reflection after we've done that for a while. And when you do that, in that gym of adversity, you'll be a stronger leader for it. You'll be a stronger leader for it. There's another resource that I would point you to if you want to check it out later on after the webinar sometime. You can download it for free, called the Scary Times Success Manual. That'll help you get some additional information as well. We need all the help we can to become better leaders, don't we? And I would invite you to make this ongoing crisis your leadership growth opportunity. I've given you some great information, I think, and referred you to some great information on leading in crisis just now. I've reminded you of some great resources that you already have. Maybe as we've gone through this time, maybe your mind has gone to books that you have on your shelf, like I have on my shelf, that you need to dust off and get out. Nothing wrong with that. Do that. But the important thing is, will you turn that information into the right action as you continue leading in this crisis? We learn best while we're doing. And this crisis is a great opportunity for you to do that. But to do that, we need a thinking partner. Not someone to think for us, but someone to help us think. Help us follow our intuition, if you will. Help us navigate. But again, help us. Not do it for us, but help us. Specifically, we need a coach. We need a coach in our lives. Someone special, if you will, that you can sit down, you can schedule some time with, even on a regular basis, so that you can think through things. And as a result, someone that will help us to identify some of our problems and our challenges, and someone that's going to help us stay focused on them long enough to change how we handle them. I don't know if you're like me, but sometimes you read through information and you've read things more than once, but there hasn't been a change that's taken place yet. A coach can help to bring about that change. We need someone to ask the questions that we may need to answer right there in that moment in our life. We need someone to make observations right then and there in our life as they observe, as they listen, without judgment, but just to make objective observations about what they're hearing and what they're sensing from us. We need someone to help us move through the fear that is keeping us from taking action in our present life. Again, we need to take care of this now. Not later, but now. And as you do that, you start to really learn to lead differently. because you're starting to apply what you know. And I believe God has gifted me and equipped me to be that someone for you, possibly, a professional level coach. Whatever level you are at as a leader, I can help you grow to the next level. I've done that with some people already. One person named Suzanne, I was able to help her explore the resistance that she was experiencing in her business as she tried to lead that venture, and help her to uncover the sources of that resistance and then set up some solutions, all within a very safe, supportive environment. I helped another doctor, Dr. Ira Pinkston, work through some new issues that had come up in his life and re-straighten out some other issues. Sometimes, it takes some continued attention in our lives so that issues stay straightened out. And then I helped a gal named Ida White, a Cheyenne woman here in Albuquerque. And she said this: once I established and verbalized an action I wanted to correct, I was able to see how I could make that change. The coaching from Scott helped me to figure out what I needed to do. Coaching provides a way for you to grow in this area of leading through crisis, like few other tools will help you to do. I think you need to do that because you're here. And so I have put together a package, if you will, 7 sessions for you of professional coaching, special package that are, I think, within your reach financially. The first one is a sample coaching session, and that's free, so you can get a taste of coaching. I offer that to everybody that I work with anyways. And then the first 2 of 6 sessions that people would normally pay for are also free in this special offer that I'm making to you as well, so that you can continue to lead through crisis. Again, it's so important to just dive in and begin giving attention to the lessons that we need to learn. The pricing is based on your leadership role. So if you're a top leader, or maybe you're a treasured leader, you've been with an organization for a long time, or maybe you're just starting out as a rising leader in your professional career, if you will, maybe you're even a student leader. Whatever level, whatever your leadership role is, I think this is within reach to you. So I just want to invite you to schedule your sessions today after our webinar by calling me. My number is there, going to be on the screen here in just a little bit, or my email address as well, 505-331-2897, or Scott at truthanswercoaching.com. Well, you might remember this saying, this will either kill me or make me stronger. You ever heard that? Well, imagine again being able to lead your organization to rise to the challenge the next time crisis comes, instead of running or cowering. I think we've talked about this well enough, but I'll just share this. Well, I've already mentioned this a little bit. Well, I'll share this. When I went through my doctorate, one of my seminars was on ministry leadership. And, I haven't looked at that material much since then. I have looked at other leadership materials, but the point is, I don't want to have to look up my materials first to know how to lead. I don't want to have to pull out the manual to know how to do it, right? I want to make that part of my character and my DNA. And the best way to do that is by having a coach in my own life on a regular basis. So right now I'm waiting to hire my own first professional level coach. I should have done this a long time ago, but I'm waiting to hear back right now so that I can go ahead and hire my first professional level coach. It's not going to be free, but it's going to be worthwhile. I'm looking forward to what that coach can help bring to pass in my life that I've felt the desire to see happen. Well, again, I want to thank you for being here. And before we close, I want to give us a few minutes to have a time of some questions and answers. I've tried to stay on time. I realize I ran off a little bit longer than what I wanted to. But maybe we can take a few minutes before we go to have some questions and answers. And so if you give me just a second here, I will go ahead and unmute the lines. And I think I will go ahead and do that. So 1 second here. Okay. So, and I see we have a late arrival with us. April is with us as well. And so welcome, April. So who has some questions and answers real quickly as we take the last 5 minutes or so based on your time availability to just throw some questions out there and share with one another a little bit. Anybody? Make sure that it's unmuted here. Well, again, I'm so glad that each and every one of you have been able to be a part of this first ever webinar of mine. And would love to just hear a little bit about your own, maybe even your own journey during this crisis in terms of if there's been a learning opportunity that you've had that you might want to share with us today. That would be great. One of the things that we learn in coaching is the value of silence. So I'll give you a little bit more time to see what you're impressed with asking or sharing about.
Well, this is April. I guess one of the challenges I see or crises that I have come across is how to comfort or talk to people that have lost loved ones during the COVID. I have gotten several calls and people are dealing with it very well. Matter of fact, we've had like a couple of suicides due to that. And so that was just one of my questions.
And what is your question? How to care for those folks? Or
how do I comfort them, I guess you would say, or coaching them to how they can deal with it themselves.
Right. But I think one of the best things that we can do when we're helping anybody in a time of suffering and you know, physical trial like that is just with our own presence with them. You know, as we just, as a fellow human being, as we come alongside them and just relate to them and share in their sufferings, if you will.
Yeah.
I think that brings a lot of comfort to them.
We're just able to do it over the phone. We don't. I don't go visit them because of the COVID, you know.
Right.
And that's the hard part as well, is that you're not able to be right there, maybe holding their hand or, you know, talking them face to face. Everything has to be done over the phone.
Right. Right. Well, as you probably learned, that phone line is still a powerful connection, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because you're still hearing one another's voice, you know, and you're still connecting with that person in that way. It's better than not having that connection, is it?
Yeah. Yes, definitely. You just but for me it's hard because I was a counselor and I did sit there and talk with people, and you know, their facial expressions, even their body language, really helped, you know, in dealing with certain situations. But this way, I you know, just hear their voices, you know, and that's, I guess you would say, well, how would you coach them into, I guess, becoming more reliable on the word, or on, you know, because some of them aren't saved, some of them aren't Christians, you know, and some of them, you know, don't want to pray or whatever. You know, it's just a difficult situation for me, at least.
Right. Right. And I think you're right. It presents an added challenge for us as the one who is trying to provide the comfort when we're not used to. We have some of those normal channels taken away from us, right? And I think what that means is that we have to train ourselves and tune in to some other levels of communication that are taking place with that person, even when we're just having a verbal conversation over the phone. Listening closely to somebody, giving them the opportunity to express their thoughts and their feelings. As they do that, they begin to give us insight to what they're thinking and to what they're feeling, and even gives themselves insight to what's taking place. And as we continue to listen, and we follow that intuition that I was talking about earlier, you know, sometimes we can make a connection on a whole nother non-physical level with someone, and in your case, it would be a spiritual level. Okay.
Yeah.
And that's nothing to ignore. And so as we do that, we're still able to connect and ask questions and help them to tune in and grab hold of the truth that they need, the truth maybe that they've even forgotten, that's going to help them to get through what they're going through. And that's so valuable. You know, sometimes we're used to providing other people those truths, but it's so much more powerful when that person comes to that realization themselves, maybe even for a second or a third or a fourth time, that yes, that's the truth that I forgot, and I need to hold on to that. And boy, if we've done that, then we can walk away, and they're going to be much better off, until the next time that they need us, So I hope that helps.
Yeah. I think, yeah.
Yeah. Well, good.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, and I want to thank each and every one of you for coming on this first ever webinar with me and taking part, and hope that it's been a blessing to your life, and that it's been a help to you. And I look forward to hearing from you possibly, and maybe getting to have some longer conversations with you individually, and even doing some coaching with you as well. But it's been a pleasure to have you on the call today, and I hope that you'll have a great day today. Okay? So we're going to draw this to a close. I'll give you a chance to say goodbye.
Bye.
Thank you. See you later. See you, Scott.
All right. Good deal. Good deal, Paul. Glad you could be with us, Falake.